Daniel Cross was a middle-aged man who lived on a human colony far from Earth. He had a stable job, a quiet apartment, and a daily routine that almost never changed. To everyone around him, he looked normal. He worked in the data tower, he paid his bills, he nodded politely to neighbors. But when the doors of his apartment closed each night, silence was his only companion. Silence and the echo of loneliness he carried like a shadow. He was not poor, not sick, not weak, yet something was missing. Something that made every day feel like a copy of the last. Daniel often sat by his window looking at the glow of the city towers, wondering how many other people were hiding the same emptiness behind their walls. In this colony, there was a popular solution to loneliness. They called it a pleasure pet. These were bioengineered companions, half human, half alien, designed only to serve. They were beautiful, obedient, and most importantly, programmed never to say no. People bought them like furniture, like toys, like living machines. Daniel never liked the idea. He found it cruel, almost insulting, to treat something alive as an object. But one evening, when the emptiness inside his chest felt too heavy, he made a choice that surprised even himself. He placed an order. 3 days later, a delivery unit arrived at his apartment. The door slid open and a tall figure stepped inside. She looked almost human. Soft skin, long hair that shimmered like silver under the light, and eyes that glowed faintly blue. She was wearing the standard collar that marked all pleasure pets, a sign of ownership. Her voice was calm, trained, and polite. "I am yours," she said, bowing her head. Daniel stood still, staring. For a long moment he felt uncomfortable, even guilty, seeing her like this. He had imagined many things, but he had not expected the weight of the moment. Slowly he spoke. "What's your name?" She tilted her head slightly, confused. "I do not have one." "You may choose." Daniel thought for a while. "Lyra," he finally said. "Your name is Lyra." For the first time, her glowing eyes widened and something small but real, flickered across her face. Almost like surprise. The days passed, and Daniel tried to treat Lyra differently from how others treated their pets. He did not command her every move. He asked her questions. He let her choose small things. What music to play, what color lights to turn on in the apartment. She was quiet most of the time, but Daniel noticed something unusual. She watched him, not with the empty stare of a machine, but with the curious gaze of someone trying to understand. Neighbors whispered. Some laughed. "Daniel's too soft," they said. "He acts like his pet is a real person." Others shook their heads. "He'll get bored soon like everyone else." But Daniel didn't get bored. In fact, he felt more awake than he had in years. For the first time, his apartment did not feel like a prison of silence. He found himself telling Lyra stories about Earth, about his childhood, about the books he once loved. He did not know why he shared these things with her. He only knew that she listened. Then something strange happened. One night, when the city outside was quiet and the lights inside were dim, Daniel heard a sound. He looked over and saw Lyra sitting by the window, staring at the stars. Her lips moved, soft and slow. She was whispering. Daniel leaned closer. "What are you saying?" Lyra turned her head, her glowing eyes meeting his. There was no program in the world that could explain the expression on her face. It was not empty, not mechanical. It was alive. "I dream," she whispered. "I dream too, do you?" Daniel froze. Dream? Pleasure pets were not supposed to dream. They were not supposed to think beyond their orders. Yet here she was, speaking like someone who carried a hidden truth. For the first time, Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He stared at her, realizing that the silence in his life had been replaced by something else. Not comfort, not routine, mystery. And mystery was far more dangerous than loneliness. As he sat back in his chair trying to calm his thoughts, Lyra kept looking at the stars. Her expression was unreadable, but Daniel could not shake the feeling that she was remembering something or waiting for something. That night, sleep would not come easily. Daniel Cross had opened his door to fill the emptiness of his heart. Instead, he had invited in a question that could change everything. What was Lyra, really? The morning after that strange whisper, Daniel Cross could not stop thinking about Lyra's words. "I dream too, do you?" The phrase repeated in his mind like an echo. Pleasure pets were not supposed to dream. They were not supposed to feel or wonder or remember. And yet, Lyra had looked at him with such calm truth that he could not dismiss it. At breakfast, Daniel placed a cup of hot tea in front of her. He had never seen a pleasure pet drink anything unless commanded. To his surprise, she lifted the cup, held it carefully, and took a small sip. Daniel chuckled nervously. "You're not supposed to like tea." Lyra tilted her head slightly, her silver hair falling over her shoulder. "Then maybe I am not supposed to be me," she replied softly. Daniel felt his chest tighten. This was no simple program. Something inside her was different. Days passed, and Daniel noticed more unusual things. Lyra began to learn on her own. She studied the books stacked on his shelves, turning pages with slow curiosity. She asked questions, simple at first, about words, about stories. "Why do humans write about heroes?" she asked one evening. "Because we want to believe we can be more than we are," Daniel answered. Another time she touched the old piano in the corner of his apartment. Most pets would ignore it, but Lyra pressed the keys carefully, listening to the sound. "This feels alive," she whispered. Daniel found himself smiling more often. He laughed, something he hadn't done in years. Lyra's presence filled the emptiness he had carried for so long. But it was not just comfort. It was curiosity, a strange bond growing between man and creation. Outside his walls, the world was not kind. When Daniel walked with Lyra through the streets, people stared. Some smirked. Some whispered. "Look, he treats it like a person," one man sneered. "Pathetic," another muttered. Daniel ignored them, but Lyra's eyes lowered whenever she heard the words. Daniel wished he could shield her from the cruelty, but how could he explain to her that people only saw her as property? One night Daniel returned home late from work. He found Lyra sitting in the dark, staring at the window again. "Do you ever wonder what is out there?" she asked, pointing at the stars. Daniel shrugged. "Sometimes, but out there is too far." "My life is here," Lyra turned to him. Her glowing blue eyes seemed brighter. "What if my life is not here? What if I belong out there?" Her voice carried something new. Longing. The bond between them grew stronger, and with it Daniel's fear. If she could dream, if she could long for freedom, then she was more than her design. And if others discovered this, what would they do to her? One evening, Daniel brought out an old device from his drawer, a memory scanner. He had once used it in his work. He placed it gently near Lyra's collar, curious to see what data it held. The screen blinked. Lines of code appeared. But not only code. Hidden deep inside were fragments of memories. Voices, songs, and images of strange forests under alien skies. A young voice crying. A mother calling a name. Daniel's hands shook. These were not human memories. They belonged to her. Lyra looked at him, her face calm, but her voice trembling. "I see them too, in my dreams." Daniel shut the scanner quickly, his heart racing. If the government ever knew, they would destroy her. Pleasure pets were not supposed to remember they were once something else. He looked at Lyra with fear and wonder. "Who are you really?" he whispered. She touched his hand lightly, her fingers warm. "I don't know, but with you I feel like I can find out." From that night, Daniel made a choice. He would protect her. He would keep her secret no matter the cost, but protection came with risk. Neighbors noticed Lyra's behavior. She spoke too clearly, moved too freely, laughed too naturally. People began to whisper louder. One afternoon, a friend from work cornered Daniel. "Listen, Cross, people are talking. They say your pet isn't normal. Be careful. If the authority hears about it, you'll lose everything." Daniel forced a smile, but his heart pounded. He knew his friend was right. Still, when he returned home and saw Lyra smiling softly at him, humming a tune she had no reason to know, he knew he could never give her up. The bond between man and pet had grown into something unspoken, something dangerous. Daniel no longer saw Lyra as a machine or as property. He saw her as someone who had been stolen from another life, another world. And Lyra? She no longer looked at him like an owner. She looked at him like a partner, like someone who gave her hope. But hope was dangerous in this colony, and Daniel could already feel the eyes of the world turning toward him. What began as an attempt to cure loneliness was becoming something far greater, something the colony was not ready to accept. Daniel Cross could no longer see Lyra as a machine. Each day, her actions, her words, and her eyes proved she was something more. Yet the question kept burning inside him. What was she before the collar? He tried to ignore it at first. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and fear is even stronger. He knew that if the colony authorities suspected Lyra was different, they would take her away. Pleasure pets were not allowed to change. They were property, nothing more. But Daniel could not stop thinking about her dreams and the strange fragments he had seen on his scanner. One night, after making sure the windows were shut and the doors locked, Daniel pulled the memory scanner back out. Lyra sat quietly, her glowing eyes watching him. "Do you want to know?" Daniel asked. His voice was low, heavy with the weight of the choice. Lyra hesitated. Then she nodded. "Yes, please." Daniel placed the scanner against her collar. The device buzzed and streams of data filled the screen. At first it was only numbers and code. But then the hidden layers opened again. Images, voices, fragments of songs. A child's laughter. A forest under twin suns. Strange buildings that shimmered like crystal. And then screams. Burning skies, chains. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He wasn't looking at programmed memories. These were real. Lyra gasped softly. I remember this place." Her voice shook as she pressed a hand against her temple. "I remember. My people." Daniel leaned closer, his heart pounding. "You're not just a creation. You were someone before this, weren't you?" Lyra's eyes filled with something Daniel had never seen in her before. Tears. "We were free," she whispered. "We had songs, families, homes. Humans came. They took us. They changed us, made us pets." Her voice broke and she buried her face in her hands. Daniel froze, horror twisting inside him. He had suspected something was wrong with the system, but this was worse than he could have imagined. Pleasure pets weren't artificial at all. They were once a living race, captured and enslaved by humanity. And Lyra was one of them. For hours, Lyra spoke in broken pieces about the flashes she remembered. A mother's hand pulling her into hiding, soldiers with metal masks dragging people away, a ship, darkness, waking up in a lab with no name, no past, only orders. Daniel listened, feeling sick. The colony taught them that pets were bioengineered for companionship, made in labs, not born. The truth was darker, too dark to believe. Finally, Lyra looked up at him. Her tears glowed faintly in the light of her blue eyes. "Why do you treat me like more? Why didn't you use me like the others do?" Daniel shook his head, his voice firm. "Because you are more. I see it, I feel it, and now I know it." Lyra's lips trembled, almost forming a smile, but then her face turned serious. "If they find out I remember, they will erase me." Daniel's blood ran cold. She was right. The authority would not allow a pet to carry memories of freedom. They would shut her down, wipe her mind, or worse, destroy her completely. "I won't let that happen," Daniel said. He grabbed her hands, holding them tightly. "I promise, Lyra, I'll protect you." The next day at work, Daniel could not focus. He saw numbers on his screen, but his mind kept drifting to Lyra's memories. He glanced around nervously, wondering if anyone else had noticed her unusual behavior. At lunch, a coworker leaned across the table. "Hey, Cross, word is your pet is different. Talks too much. Acts too free," the man smirked. "Better watch out. Authority doesn't like when toys break their programming." Daniel forced a laugh, but his hands trembled as he picked up his drink. The rumors were spreading faster than he had expected. When he returned home, he locked the door quickly. Lyra was waiting, sitting by the piano again, softly pressing the keys. A sad tune filled the air. Daniel sat beside her. "We need to be careful," he whispered. Lyra nodded. "I can feel them watching." He frowned. "Who?" She looked toward the window, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Everyone." That night, Daniel could not sleep. He kept seeing the memories, Lyra's homeworld burning, her people screaming. He felt anger rising inside him. Humanity had stolen everything from them, turned them into products. And now he was the only one who knew the truth. As dawn broke, Daniel made a silent vow. He would not just protect Lyra. He would uncover the full secret no matter the cost. But the more he thought about it, the more dangerous it became. If one pet could remember, could dream, then maybe others could too. And if that truth spread, it would shake the colony to its core. Daniel stared at Lyra as she slept, her silver hair glowing softly under the pale light. She looked peaceful, but he knew peace would not last. The secret was too big, and secrets like this never stayed hidden for long. The secret of Lyra's past changed everything for Daniel Cross. He could no longer see her as a pet. She was not an object, not a product. She was someone, a survivor of a stolen race. But outside their apartment, the world did not see her that way. To the colony, she was still only property, wearing the collar that marked her as owned. Daniel tried to keep their secret safe, but the bond between them grew stronger, too strong to hide. He spoke to her not like a master, but like an equal. He laughed with her, argued with her, listened to her music. And people noticed. It started with whispers in the corridors of his workplace. "Cross treats his pet like a wife," someone muttered. "He's gone soft," another sneered. One man shook his head. "Dangerous. If the authority finds out, he's finished." Daniel ignored them, but inside he felt the pressure building. He was walking a thin line between love and disaster. At night, Lyra sensed his fear. "You don't have to protect me," she said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "Yes, I do," Daniel replied. "Because no one else will. Because you deserve more than this." Her glowing eyes softened. "Then let me be more." "Not your pet, your partner." Daniel froze. The words hit him like a storm. Partner, not servant. "Not property, partner. You mean marriage?" He whispered. Lyra nodded. "If I am your wife, then no one can take me from you." Daniel's heart pounded. Human law forbade such unions. Pets were classified as property, not people. A marriage would not be seen as love, it would be seen as rebellion. For days, Daniel wrestled with the decision. He walked the city streets, watching other pets follow their owners like shadows. None of them laughed. None of them dreamed. They were silent, obedient, hollow, but Lyra was alive. She was different, and he could not deny the truth in his heart. He loved her. One evening, Daniel stood before Lyra, his hands trembling. "If we do this, they'll come after us." "Are you sure?" Lyra took his hand gently. "I have lived in chains. I would rather risk freedom with you than spend eternity as a pet." Daniel felt tears in his eyes. "Then we do it." The following week, Daniel took a step that would change his life forever. He registered Lyra, not as property, but as his legal partner. The system rejected it at first, red flashing letters warning unauthorized entry. But Daniel forced the registration through, hacking the colony records with his old skills. When the confirmation finally blinked green, Daniel let out a shaky laugh. Lyra smiled, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. For one brief moment, they felt free. But freedom comes with a cost. Within days, rumors exploded across the colony. Cross married his pet. He's insane. This is against everything we believe. People spat at him on the streets. Others threw slurs at Lyra, calling her a toy and a beast. Yet not everyone hated them. Some whispered with curiosity. A few even looked at Lyra with respect. But the authority did not stay silent. Daniel received a notice. "Report to the court of order. Immediate compliance required." Lyra clutched his hand as he read the message. "They'll try to break us apart," she said. Daniel nodded grimly. "Then we'll stand together." The court chamber was vast and cold, filled with officials in dark robes. Citizens crowded the gallery, buzzing with whispers. Lyra stood beside Daniel, her collar glowing faintly, a symbol of her status. A stern voice boomed. "Daniel Cross, you have committed a violation of colonial law. You registered property as your spouse. Do you deny this?" Daniel raised his head. "No, I don't deny it. I love her. She is not property. She is a person." The chamber erupted in gasps and laughter. Some jeered. Some shouted insults. The judge's eyes narrowed. "You disgrace our order. This creature was made for service, not for love." Before Daniel could answer, Lyra stepped forward. Her voice rang clear, steady, alive. "I was not made. I was born. You took me. You chained me. But I remember. I dream, I feel. And I choose him." The room fell silent. Even the judge looked shaken by her words. For the first time, the colony had witnessed a pleasure pet speaking not as an object, but as someone claiming her humanity. Daniel gripped her hand tightly, his heart racing. He knew they had crossed a line that could never be erased. As the officials whispered among themselves, Daniel realized the truth. This was no longer just about him and Lyra, it was about every pet in the colony. And if Lyra's voice could awaken others, the world would never be the same. The courtroom had been shaken by Lyra's words. For a moment, silence had filled the hall and even the judge's face had faltered. But silence did not last. The authority could not allow such defiance to spread. 2 days later, Daniel received the official order. "Your registration is void. The subject will be seized for reconditioning." Failure to comply will be treated as treason. Lyra read the words with calm eyes, but Daniel saw the fear hidden behind them. They are coming for me, she whispered. Daniel crushed the notice in his fist. No, they will not take you. Not while I breathe. It began quietly. Unmarked drones hovering near their apartment, neighbors who suddenly avoided eye contact, strange men loitering at street corners. The city seemed to change overnight, and Daniel felt eyes on him wherever he went. One evening, as he returned from work, he saw the flashing red light above his door. A warning. The authority was inside. Daniel's heart raced. He ran up the stairwell but stopped before entering. Through the crack of the door he saw them, two enforcers in black armor, towering machines at their side. Lyra stood in the middle of the room, calm but defiant. Come with us, one enforcer ordered. You are property, not a partner. Your memory will be erased. Daniel felt his rage boil. He burst through the door. No, she is my wife. The enforcers turned, their masks glowing. One stepped forward. Then you are guilty too. You will be punished. Before they could strike, Lyra grabbed Daniel's hand. Run! They sprinted through the narrow alleys of the colony, the sound of metal boots and drone wings echoing behind them. Sirens lit the night, painting the buildings in red and blue. Daniel's lungs burned as he pulled Lyra along. Where do we go? He gasped. Anywhere they are not, she answered, her glowing eyes fixed forward. The chase grew louder. The enforcers released hounds, mechanical beasts with glowing jaws. The crowd scattered, shouting as the hunt tore through the streets. Daniel and Lyra ducked into an old transport tunnel, the lights flickering overhead. The ground trembled as the hounds entered behind them. Daniel turned to fight, but Lyra pulled him forward. Not yet. We can't win here. They found refuge in the underlevels of the city, a place forgotten by most where broken machines rusted and the poor lived in shadows. Here the authorities' gaze was weaker but never gone. Daniel leaned against the wall, catching his breath. Lyra sat beside him, her silver hair tangled, her face calm but tired. They will never stop, Daniel said bitterly. They will chase us until we're caught. Lyra touched his hand gently. Then let them chase. I will not go back to chains, and neither will you. Her words carried strength, but Daniel felt the weight of reality pressing down. The authority had endless drones, endless soldiers. He had nothing but his courage and his love for her. As they rested, a figure approached from the shadows, an old man dressed in rags but with sharp eyes. You're the one who married his pet, he said with a raspy laugh. Bold, very bold, Daniel tensed. Who are you? The man smiled. A friend. And not the only one who thinks pets are more than property. You've started something, Cross. The others are waking. Lyra leaned forward. Others? The man nodded. Your words in court spread faster than the authority could silence. Some pets are remembering just like you. The hunt is not just for you. It is for all of them now. Daniel's heart pounded. His marriage had become more than love. It had become a spark for rebellion. Suddenly the tunnel shook with heavy footsteps. The hounds had found them. Run! The old man shouted. Daniel and Lyra bolted as the beasts charged, their metal jaws snapping in the dark. Daniel grabbed a broken pipe, swinging it hard against one hound. Sparks flew, but the machine only staggered. Lyra raised her hands. For the first time, Daniel saw something new. An energy glow in her palms, faint but real. She slammed her hands against the tunnel wall and the light burst outward. The ceiling collapsed, crushing two of the hounds beneath rubble. Daniel stared in shock.
Lyra, what was that?
She shook, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. I don't know, but I think it's mine. It's part of who I was before. They escaped deeper into the underlevels, leaving the rubble and smoke behind. But Daniel knew the hunt was far from over. The authority would not stop. Not after seeing Lyra's power. Not after hearing her voice. As they collapsed in an abandoned station, Daniel looked at her with awe and fear. They won't just see you as a runaway now. They'll see you as a threat. Lyra held his gaze, her voice steady. Then let them. Because I am not afraid anymore. Daniel realized something in that moment. The hunt was not only about capturing them. It was about silencing a truth too powerful to hide. And the longer they survived, the louder that truth would become. The days of running had worn Daniel and Lyra thin. They hid in tunnels, abandoned stations and ruined factories where the authorities' eyes did not always reach. Each day was survival. Each night was fear, but something had changed. Everywhere they went, Daniel noticed other pleasure pets watching them. Some stared with empty eyes, but others looked at Lyra with recognition, as if something inside them had begun to stir. The whispers were true. She was awakening the others, and that made them dangerous. One morning, Daniel woke to the sound of footsteps in the shadows. He grabbed a broken pipe ready to fight, but it was not the enforcers. It was a small group of humans and pets together, hiding just like them. A young woman stepped forward. "You're Daniel Cross, the man who married his pet." Daniel tightened his grip on the pipe. "And if I am?" The woman smiled faintly. "Then you are not alone. There are more of us. People who believe what you believe, that they are not property, that they deserve freedom." Lyra stood tall beside Daniel, her silver hair catching the dim light. "Then why hide?" she asked. "Because the authority kills those who resist," the woman replied simply. Daniel felt the weight of her words. Hiding might keep them alive, but it would not change anything. Sooner or later they would be caught, and that left him with a choice. Keep running or stand and fight. The choice came sooner than expected. That night the tunnels shook with the sound of marching boots. Drones filled the sky, beams of light scanning the ruins. A voice thundered from speakers above. "Daniel Cross, surrender the property you call wife, or face execution for treason." Lyra clutched his hand. "They're here." Daniel swallowed hard. He could run again. He could drag her through another dark tunnel, hide another night, live another day. But how many more days would they get? How long before she was taken, her memories erased forever? "No," he whispered. "We stop running." Lyra looked at him with wide, glowing eyes. "Daniel," he shook his head. "I'm done hiding. If they want us, they'll have to face the truth." The authority captured them the next day. Drones swarmed, soldiers surrounded, and Daniel refused to resist. Not this time. Not here. They were dragged in chains to the Grand Court of Order, a place even larger than before, packed with citizens. People came to see the scandal for themselves. The man who had broken the law, and the pet who dared to speak like a person. The judge glared down from his high seat. "Daniel Cross, you have disobeyed the authority, spread rebellion, and corrupted society with your unlawful union. Today you will be judged." The crowd roared, some with hatred, some with curiosity, a few with sympathy. Daniel raised his head. His voice was steady. "Judge me all you want, but you cannot erase the truth. She is not property. She is my wife. She is alive." Laughter erupted. Insults rained down. "Madman! Pervert! Traitor!" The judge pounded his gavel. "Silence! This is no trial of love. This is a trial of order." He turned his gaze to Lyra. "And you speak if you dare." The chamber grew quiet. Lyra stepped forward. Her collar glowed faintly, but her voice cut through the silence with strength. "I am not a machine. I am not a pet. I was born free. You stole my people, erased our names, and made us into slaves. But I remember. I dream, I love, and I choose Daniel." The crowd gasped. Her words spread like fire, impossible to contain. The judge's face turned red with fury. "Enough, you are nothing but property. You will be dismantled and your husband executed for treason." Guards moved forward, weapons ready. Daniel's heart pounded. He had expected this, but the fear still cut deep. He looked at Lyra, her glowing eyes locked on his. "If this is the end," he whispered, "I regret nothing." Lyra squeezed his hand. "It will not be the end. Not if we choose," and then it happened. From the crowd, voices rose, first one, then many. Pleasure pets began to speak, breaking their silence. "I remember. I dream. I feel." Chaos erupted. Some humans shouted in horror. Others stared in disbelief. The authority guards froze, uncertain as dozens of pets defied their programming all at once. Daniel realized the truth in that moment. Their choice was never just about themselves. It was about all of them. The judge shouted for order, but it was too late. The awakening had begun. As guards tried to drag Lyra away, Daniel shouted with all his strength. "She is not property. None of them are." His voice was swallowed by the chaos, but it didn't matter. The choice had been made. He and Lyra had stood together, and the colony could never return to silence. The courtroom was no longer a place of order. It was chaos. Voices filled the air, pets crying out that they remembered, that they dreamed, that they felt. Some shook free from their master's commands, their glowing eyes bright with defiance. The authority guards tried to silence them, but there were too many. The sound of awakening spread like wildfire, unstoppable. Daniel Cross stood in the center, his chains heavy around his wrists, but his heart burning with hope. He looked at Lyra, and for the first time since this began, he believed they had a chance. The judge screamed for order, pounding the gavel again and again. "Silence! Silence, or you will all be destroyed." But the crowd no longer listened. Humans shouted at each other, some demanding punishment, others calling for freedom. Families argued, friends divided. The colony was splitting before Daniel's eyes. Lyra stepped forward, her voice rising above the chaos. "We are not your property. We are not machines. We are people, and we will not be silent anymore." The chamber shook with the force of her words. Even Daniel felt the air tremble. The guards charged forward, weapons raised. Daniel braced himself, ready to die at her side. But before the strike could land, something happened. A pulse of light burst from Lyra's hands, knocking the guards back. The chains around Daniel shattered like glass. The crowd gasped in shock. The pet stared at her, eyes wide, as if recognizing something ancient and powerful. Daniel turned to her, stunned. "Lyra, what did you just do?" Her glowing eyes softened. "I don't fully know, but I think it's who I was before, who we were before." For the first time, Daniel realized Lyra's people were not only intelligent, they were powerful, and the authority had stolen that power for themselves. The trial collapsed into chaos. Daniel and Lyra fled the chamber, but they were no longer alone. Dozens of pets followed, their voices raised in defiance. On the streets outside, the city erupted. Some humans tried to drag their pets back into chains, but others released them willingly, guilt heavy in their eyes. Drones filled the skies, but many were destroyed by bursts of strange energy from the newly awakened. The rebellion had begun. Days turned into weeks, and the colony transformed into a battleground. The authority sent enforcers to crush the uprising, but resistance grew stronger with every passing day. Humans who believed in freedom joined with the awakened pets. Others clung to fear, desperate to preserve the old order. Through it all, Daniel and Lyra stood at the center. Their love had become the symbol of something greater, a bond that proved pets were not possessions but people worthy of choice. Daniel once thought of himself as just a lonely man, but now, when others looked at him, they saw a leader. One night, after a long day of fighting, Daniel and Lyra stood on the roof of a ruined tower. The city glowed below them, fires burning, voices shouting, banners rising. "Do you regret it?" Daniel asked quietly. "All of this started because of us." Lyra shook her head, her silver hair catching the moonlight. "No, it started because of them. Because they stole who we were. We only reminded the world that love cannot be owned." Daniel smiled faintly, his hand brushing hers. "Then whatever comes next, we face it together." Lyra's glowing eyes locked on his. Always. The future was uncertain. The authority still held power, and the rebellion was far from over. But something had already changed forever. Pets across the colonies were awakening, their memories returning, their voices rising. The illusion of ownership was breaking, and in every whisper of freedom, in every act of defiance, people spoke of the man who had dared to marry his pet, and the woman who was no pet at all. As dawn broke, Daniel and Lyra looked out at the rising sun. The city was scarred but alive with change. For the first time in years, Daniel did not feel lonely. He felt purpose. And for Lyra, the woman who had once been chained, the future stretched wide like the stars she used to dream about. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "Then let's begin." They stood together as the first light touched the horizon, partners, rebels, and symbols of a love that had defied an empire.